David Martin asks, when you have to learn a new technique or skill for a job, do you charge the customer for it? No, you don't. You take it on faith that you're going to eat a lot of time on that job. And hopefully you have somebody who already knows how to do that thing to help consult with you about what the going rate is for such a thing. You definitely don't want to underbid a job that requires a skill you don't yet have. Because once you have that skill, the client's going to want the next one at the same price you charged for the first one. And if you've underbid, then you're just going to lose money all the way down. And that it totally happens. Sometimes you might say to the client, I'm going to charge the going rate for this thing, but I am learning a new process on this. So I cannot guarantee that the next one, if you want another of these, is going to cost the same. This is all part of that, trying to be as clear, as crystal clear as possible with the client starting out. It helps to put everything down on paper and to agree and read it together. Seriously, it's like that's specifically clear. Andrew Montgomery asks, how do you decide when the money isn't worth it for a given job, even a job that's profitable on the ledger? This is wonderful because what you're getting at is there are jobs that you can profit from that still aren't worth it. And that is really true. The reasons a job might not be worth it, it might suck up your shop and not allow you to do anything else for the whole time you're doing that job. And if you have multiple things going, that can be too much of an expense. But really, usually the reason you'd want to turn down a job, even though it seems profitable, is because the client is not a good client. And that's institutional knowledge. That's learning how to smell those weirdos and ferret them out of the woodwork before they have a chance to harm you. It also may be that the job is tedious and you don't want to do that kind of job. Freelancing is hard. Freelancing is hard work. It takes a ton of dedication. My main memory of my early days of freelancing were that I spent a ton of time looking for work. In fact, I treated not having work like a job so that I'd still wake up at 8:30 every morning and start calling old clients and connecting up with people and trying to find work and thinking of new industries. You know, I started out in commercial special effects, but at one point I wrote to a company that built magic effects in Las Vegas. I wrote to a company that built prototypes for aerospace. I did tons of toy prototyping in those early days, which is a very lucrative form of model making. But freelancing is difficult and it's stressful, and you build a mindset of like, what's next, what's next, what's next? So you may have a nice, big, lucrative job right now, and you're still thinking, yeah, but what about rent 2 months from now? How am I going to deal with that? That is the freelance life. But the upside is you control your schedule. Like, I have never regretted having control over my schedule when I was freelancing. I got to spend tons of time with my kids. My quality of life was really good. I mean, and this is why the whole work from home movement is so important and so vital. And in that, it is totally reasonable to turn down a job that's profitable because you just don't want to do it. I have done that a few times. Actually, I'll tell the most powerful one for me was I was working on Bicentennial Man here in the city. It was shooting out on Treasure Island, and it was a fun gig from a material and prop standpoint. It was a terrible gig from a supervising standpoint. The supervisor on that job, some of my old ILM colleagues and I still do a vicious impression of that supervisor because he was such a pain in the ass. And I wanted to quit that job. And I wanted to quit that job on Bicentennial Man because I wanted to work in the art department on episode 2. And I knew that they were spooling up the art department on episode 2. And I wanted to get on it. But I was in the local 16 here, the local IATSE union. And the IATSE union wouldn't allow you to just leave a job for another job for obvious reasons. So I had to quit the Bicentennial Man job in order to be available to be hired on episode 2. I had 5-month-old twin boys, and I went to their mom, my ex-wife, and I was like, baby, I want to quit this job because it's awful. I am having no fun on it. Everyone is unhappy. And I want to work on episode 2. So here's what I'm telling you I want to do. I want to quit this job. Then I'm going to go have lunch with someone at ILM. Hopefully a supervisor will see me and say, hey, are you available? And I'm going to say yes. And you're going to say, come on along. Come on, work on episode 2. And she said, I trust you. And then the day I gave my 2 weeks notice on Bicentennial Man, Jamie called me up and said, hey, we got this big film for Henry Selick called Monkey Bone. I'd like you to be a supervisor on it. It's a year's worth of work. And I was surprised at my internal response because I didn't want to work for Jamie anymore. I had worked for Jamie for 5 years and I didn't want to work for him anymore. Still, I wasn't positive I wanted to turn the job down. So I negotiated a pretty good salary for doing that job, and then I turned it down. It was kind of a dick move, I agree, but I was on automatic pilot when he said, can you do this? It's a year of work. I said, what's the fee? He said this, and I said, actually, I'd like to get this, and he's like, okay. And then I said, well, let me go think about it. And I thought about it, and I came back the next day, and I said, I'm turning down this job. Because I went to my wife and I was like, hey, I know that I just quit this one job because I hope to get this other one. Now there's a new player in the mix. I've just been offered a year of work that I don't want to take. And my wife said, I trust you. And that's being partners. I really appreciated that she trusted me on that one because it was a powerful moment. And she could have said, too much uncertainty, I can't handle it, in which case I would have taken the Monkey Bone job. Like that, I was bringing that to her to collaborate on our future. And she trusted me. She trusted my assessment of the situation. And the answer is that I did quit Bicentennial Man. 3 days after I quit, I went up to Kerner Boulevard. I had lunch with one of my friends, and Steve Gawley saw me and said, hey, are you available? And I said, yeah. And a few weeks later, I was working in the art department on episode 2. So it came to fruition as I had hoped it would. But that was a leap of faith. And I was surprised that I wanted to turn down this gig. Okay, so actually, let me go all the way back. I think it's really important when we're talking about making these financial decisions to make it clear the kind of privilege that I grew up under. Because I grew up in a solidly upper middle class intellectual family on the East Coast that frequently, when I ran into trouble with money, would help me out. They paid my rent many times until probably it was 23 or so. And then I became so ashamed of asking for money, I just stopped and never asked them for money again. But they gave me a tremendous amount of latitude. They let me quit jobs that I didn't want, and they helped me for a couple months with rent. That's huge. That allowed me to put a value on my personal experience. And not everyone grows up with that value. So I want to state, it's not like this is easy for everyone to come to these conclusions, and understanding the parameters by which I came to them, i.e. my personal time and space are important, my mental health is important, my creative juices are important. These are all things I was taught directly by my parents, by their actions and their words and how they helped me. And a lot of people don't grow up with parents like that. And, that means that these decisions can feel a lot more emotionally fraught. Turning down money is hard to do. And it's also really important to do as a creative. We seek the freelance lifestyle because it gives us control. Over what? Over our well-being. Seriously, that's what it gives us control over. When you are managing your own employment, you are managing your mental health, and that is one of your assets. And your calmness and your lack of stress are assets that you bring, and you adjust those by the jobs that you take.